All right, then with that, let's begin. And I will say that welcome to Boroughs and Burbs. I believe this is episode 57. And the title is California Dreamin'. Can the hot markets out west continue to rise? And I have my special guest, Ivan Estrada, super agent in Beverly Hills, author of Brand with Purpose, and one of RealTrends Best Real Estate Professionals. You were on their top 100 list or something, I think, this year. Yeah. So I also want to introduce Scott Hobbs, as soon as I can find the stop share button. Scott Hobbs, my co-host, he's across town. I have known Scott for 40 years, and Scott and I went to high school together, and then he went and built a pretty impressive business with several hundred employees, building all of the most impressive houses in Fairfield County, New Jersey, the Hamptons, and now New York City. So Scott comes from a very impressive luxury building background. So he's very interested in what you have to say about the LA market as well. And, maybe you can give him some tips on what he should be doing back east.
Absolutely.
You have room for a guy like Scott Hobbs in LA, or is there already?
I've got room. I've got a lot of room, Scott. You can come. My office is open. I'll leave the door. Let me know what you like to drink. I can definitely be of service.
I do actually have a builder friend who had moved up in the LA Orange County area, and it's impressive hearing some of the stories about the stuff that he's getting to build and the people that are still coming. And you hear about the California exodus. And yet there are some people doing monster, big, huge, amazing houses out there today, planning them. Still starting.
Yeah, there are. I mean, the market is shifting for sure. Absolutely. We can all feel it, but there's still a lot of buyers out there looking. Depends on the price points. Obviously, interest rates are going up, but for people that are buying, large homes, 10 million plus, it doesn't affect them.
Well, and when you describe like Beverly Hills, I mean, what is the market in Beverly Hills? I mean, it's obviously a storied name that everyone associates with the biggest and the best. But as with like a Greenwich or any other places, we're sure they're not all $10 million homes.
No, absolutely. Like where we're at the office, 150 South El Camino, or Elliman office, we're at the 90212 area code. So we got 90210, 90211, and 90212. In the 90212 area and 90211. Price points for homes like right now for a single family home in Beverly Hills, 3-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,700 square feet. You're looking at about 2.8, 2.9 million starting point. And that's starting entry point, needs a little work, needs a little love. But that's pretty much your entry point for single family homes. And for condos, you could probably find a nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo starting entry point around like 1.4, 1.5 in those area codes.
And how big is Beverly Hills? I mean, how many housing units / people live there?
Oh God, that's a good question, and I wish I knew that answer. And I'm a CPA. I should know this. I should know this by heart. But roughly homes, God, there has to. God, I want to give you a number, but I'm afraid to. I see 4,000 or 5,000 in my head, but it has to be a lot more than that. Because, like, for example, my area of expertise is not just Beverly Hills. I work Bel Air, Brentwood, Westwood, Santa Monica, West Hollywood. So my area of knowledge, if I had to count the amount of homes, actually, after this, I'm going to go on the MLS and see how many homes are in Beverly Hills.
Now, people who want to be in Beverly Hills definitely just want to be in Beverly Hills, because when I watch the TV shows, they're like, you know what? Maybe I'll branch into the Valley, where there's better values and stuff. And people are, oh, no, I'm not going to the Valley. So there definitely seems to be, it's important what zip code you're in. Yes, you're either in or you're out.
Well, it depends, because, I've had clients that are from foreigners from other countries. Beverly Hills is a brand, right? It's a brand that everybody knows. Everyone knows that zip code of 90210. And if they want to tell their friends and family back home that they bought a house in Beverly Hills or that they live in Beverly Hills, that has more of leverage for them and more stature than per se living in Bel Air. where I think Bel Air and Beverly Hills, they're pretty similar. Actually, Bel Air, you get a lot more bang for your buck, I would say. Much bigger lots, a lot more privacy. But some people, they don't care about that. It's more about being close to the shopping and the dining, and just being able to tell their friends that they live in Beverly Hills. But usually a lot of my clients who only want Beverly Hills are from foreign countries. Middle East, I would say, is a big one where they only want to be in Beverly Hills.
All right, so the big question is how are things? You know, who's moving into LA? Who's moving out? And are things just fine? Because what I hear are record prices. We're still hitting record prices. But part of me says, well, that's probably a result of the luxury market. We're still seeing record prices, and the luxury market is doing really well because that crowd is a little less sensitive to interest rates, right? There may be, you know, they want a mortgage, but they don't maybe need a mortgage or maximizing their mortgage. So for them, they're looking, anyway, so I believe that the super luxury market is probably doing fine. And yet we're starting to see in the aggregate statewide, there's an outward migration. Would you say that's true? We have two markets going on.
That is true. In the luxury market, there's a lot more to pick from now. That is blatantly obvious. We have had a big migration out to Texas and Florida. So there's a lot more inventory in the 8, 9, 10 plus market. If you're a buyer in that market, I mean, my clients who are in those price points are buying cash. You can get, I wouldn't say a deal, but there's definitely negotiating room there. Because I mean, one of my clients in the end of May for a property that was listed for 11 million, they were able to get it for 8.9. And so there's a lot more inventory in those areas. There's also a lot more inventory coming in the 30 million, 40 million, 50 million plus threshold. I think international buyers still see Los Angeles and Beverly Hills as a safe haven to put their money and their investment. And as we see, the stock market is a little choppy. Crypto market, which I had a lot of clients that were heavily invested in crypto, that's obviously very choppy. And so they're putting their money on real assets. And, some of them prefer to put their money in real estate, something that they could actually hold as an investment and also enjoy at the same time, right? Because you can't do that with stock and crypto.
How long has this, you said it's shifting. How long has this shift been occurring? Is the shift mirroring the stock market and Bitcoin anxiety? I
would say I personally felt it in the last 3 weeks. Because even in April, in all price points, I have to say, at least this is from my experience and my clients and my team, it was still a very competitive market. Buyers were just jumping on things. There wasn't a lot of hand holding. In the last 3 weeks, I've had clients who are in higher price points who need my hand holding. They want to know, look, I know I'm buying cash, but I work really hard for my money. I own a business, and I have to be honest. I'm afraid that, there's a recession looming. We can't confirm nor deny that there's a recession coming, but it may affect my business. And if it affects my business, it affects my income. And I don't want to be, putting myself in a situation where I'm going to need to be liquid. And so I think that's something that a lot of my clients who are buying the much larger homes, they're all business owners. And so if there is some type of financial crisis coming, it's going to directly affect their business, and they don't want to heavily invest in real estate, especially super high-end real estate, until they see what's going to happen. That's the word. If I had to put a word to this podcast, all my clients, I've been hearing this every day, is I just want to wait to see what's going to happen.
So how do you view your role as the agent serving those clients and helping to navigate, is this really in their best interest, or should they wait?
Asking a lot of questions. So my background, before I got into real estate, I've been in real estate for 13 years. I was a CPA at Deloitte. I was in audit and tax. And in that business, as an auditor, my job was to ask as many possible, any question that I felt that was going to help me get to a solution or create value. And so that's what I've been doing with all my clients who are still on the fence. It's okay, well, let me ask you a couple of questions. Are you, what's the point of this investment? Are you buying it just to buy and hold? Are you buying it because you need it? Are you buying it because you want it? Right? A lot of clients who want it, they're like, yeah, I want it, but I don't need it. Okay, well, if it's not an immediate need, then maybe you can hold off, right? And as much as I'd love to say, let's just do it, let's just put an offer in, let's just go for it, I go back to my CPA brain, right? My fiduciary brain that says, don't do what's best for you, do what's best for your client. Is this a need? Is this a want? If for some reason, I know you're a business owner, if for some reason the business goes down, have you spoken to your CFO? Have you spoken to your accountants? Would you still be, even though there's no mortgage on this property, can you still maintain your business and be liquid enough to be able to handle what's coming, if there is something coming, without it affecting any of your other assets or your mental health, right? Can you endure this if we are going into a recession, to be able to endure whatever's coming your way without having to compromise on any of those things. And it's just basically having a conversation, a heart-to-heart conversation, and being honest, because I think in this market is when our clients are probably looking to us the most for advice, and advice that comes without, us in mind, right? Who cares about our commission? Who cares about the sales? Like, they want to know that we're there and that we're going to give them the right advice. If it's waiting a little bit, then it's waiting a little bit, because that's in the last 13, almost 14 years, all my clients continue to use me and continue to give me referrals, because I keep that state of mind of, I have to do the right thing. And if the right thing for them is to wait or to rent instead of buying, then, so be it.
But do you think, so 2 questions, who are the buyers? And well, let's start there. Who are the buyers? Are they coming because of Hollywood, tech, something else? Who's driving the market? Who's buying up these $10+ million luxury homes?
So the tens of millions, well, it depends. I've had a couple of clients up from the Northern California who've purchased homes between, I would say 10 and 14, 10 and 15. The bigger price points, I've seen a lot of people move from the East Coast, New York, being one of the areas. I think people from New York were either migrating down to Florida, or some of them were coming down to California. So we've had a lot of
because of their jobs, right? Their jobs,
possibly their jobs. And also I think a lot of the 2 biggest clients that I helped last year, it was because of family. COVID really had them reevaluate their family, and that their family was on the West Coast, and that they wanted to move back home to be closer to their family. So I think, and also if this COVID situation, if this was going to keep going, they'd rather enjoy it under the sun than, having to deal with a harsh winter out on the East Coast.
I've had clients move there. You know what? Our market is heavily dependent on the finance industry, but I would say tech is emerging. Amazon, Facebook, Google have all taken major stakes in New York City in the last 2 years, 3 years. And so we're starting to see tech executives, but it's always been at least, right, Scott, 50% finance, 50, and that means Wall Street, and then it meant Wall Street plus hedge funds and private equity guys. It's the entire, ecosystem of finance. And when one of somebody's moving out west, it's usually to be, financing movies. And the last guy to come look at one of my $5 million listings here, I said, "Where are you coming from?" "Coming from LA." "What do you do?" "I finance movies." Oh, so he's in the finance / Hollywood business, and they bounce back and forth from coast to coast.
Yep.
I will say that they're looking at New York as not overheated relative to, in the pandemic, it went down a bit, and New York was hit relatively hard by the pandemic, and it still hasn't hit peak prices. Same thing in the suburbs of New York. We still haven't hit our peak prices of 2008. So nobody is calling us overheated like they're possibly calling Austin where they've never seen these prices before.
Yeah, yeah.
Are
I
you
feel
seeing prices in LA that you've never seen before? Or are you only just getting back to your pre-pandemic highs?
I think on the super high end, like the 40, $50 million price points, or some of these price points that I remember like 8-9 years ago when over $1,000 a foot was insane. And now you have some of these high rises like the Edition, 8899 Beverly, which are getting about blended about 33,000, 3,500 a foot for a condominium. But I mean, when it comes to pricing, I do feel from just from checking the MLS daily, I'm seeing it taper off. And I've been seeing a lot of price reductions. I mean, I just had 4 price reductions this week myself. And these are conversations that I haven't had to have in quite a while. Again, back to I'm a numbers guy, and I'm very good at saying, okay, this is where we're at. This is where we're headed. This is where we're going. And right now I'm kind of, I wish I had a crystal ball because I don't know. I really don't know. I think all of us are still trying to figure out where this is going. And I think on the super high end, this is a clientele that doesn't really get, I guess, it doesn't get hurt as much as, let's say, your $2 million buyer and below, especially as interest rates continue to rise. Those are clients of mine because we deal with all types of clients. Those are the clients that are, yeah, maybe I should wait. Maybe I shouldn't do anything. And then I have my clients who are just waiting, right? They're like, oh, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. This is my time to buy the big house that I wanted to buy for 20% less. This is a time to also now get into the commercial world. I'm going to buy a couple of apartment buildings because we do that as well. And so it's interesting times, to say the least. But
So,
regarding
Scott,
price, I think we're like, I don't want to say it's going down because I'm not going to admit that yet, but it's definitely, we're kind of
flat.
sailing through. We're kind of doing this.
Scott, can you comment on $3,000 a foot? My perception is that we have 3 new luxury condo projects going up in Fairfield County, and they are between 1,000 and 1,500 a foot. I don't think anything has ever sold in Fairfield County, any condo project at more than, say, 1,500 a foot. So when I hear 3,000, I say, wow, that's New York prices. Well, you do that, Scott.
When I hear 3,000, I'm like, oh my God, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, like 3,000 a foot, 3,500 a foot blended for the Edition. I mean, that's up there. But I mean, the buyers are there. Those buildings were the Edition was completely sold out. Most of them international buyers who that's not their primary dwelling. They're just using it they're there a month out of the year, and they're using it as to park their money as an investment.
Yeah. And I think for housing costs, I mean, in LA is certainly one of the LA area is one of the areas that's hotspot for contemporary design. And a lot of the stuff that's being built is it literally, as a builder, you're like, you shouldn't do this. I mean, this stuff is really hard. I mean, you got elevated pools with infinity edges in a seismic zone that on top of a hilltop with all sorts of other, I mean, it's what could possibly go wrong on these things. And the tolerances for some of the glass walls and windows are just impossible, and the overhangs and the cantilevers, and it's beyond the capabilities of even the architects to design them. And somehow they get figured out. And so you can get construction costs that get up there into the $2,000 to $3,000 a square foot range, but you're doing some stuff that is, again, really, really, really hard. And under the big buildings, again, there's some stuff that is really tricky. And again, in hindsight, people may look back and go, it shouldn't have been built this way.
Yeah.
But location plays just such a monster role too for a building. I mean, because there you get a lot more of the land cost involved, I imagine, for a apartment.
So New York City, it's all about the view. When I watch the TV shows on LA real estate, they always talk about the view, you want to be up on the hill and looking down, on the valley. So is the view everything, or is there a change in the trend on what's desirable, what people are looking for?
Well, views are important. So it depends on which part of the hill you're in. Because, for example, if you're up in the Hollywood Hills, compared to let's say Truesdale Estates, right? You have Truesdale and Beverly Hills, you have great views, but you also have a backyard. right? You have a nice big yard for the kids, for the family, for the dogs. You don't have any other house that's blocking your view, any power lines. If you're out in the Hollywood Hills and you're buying a house for, let's say, 4 million in comparison to 15, 20 million on Truesdale, you're going to have some power lines. Most of those homes, they may have a pool, but that's it. You have a pool and a deck, maybe a small balcony, but no backyard. So it really depends on where you're at in the hills, because you can also be on the other side of the hill. For example, and you talked about the valley. So we have Encino, we have Sherman Oaks, we have Studio City, which you also have a view, not of downtown or the ocean, but it's on the other side of the hill, which is still a great view. But you don't really have the perks or the that scenic view of Los Angeles that you get from being up in Beverly Hills or the Hollywood Hills.
All right, so I just put a map of the Hollywood Hills on the screen. Orient me. I see the Hollywood Bowl right there in the
Right.
middle.
Yeah. So as you make your way towards like the Laurel Canyon area, it starts getting more expensive.
Okay.
So, and because here, the Hollywood Dell area, that's like Hollywood, which is okay. And as you keep moving the cursor towards Laurel Canyon, then you get into Mount Olympus, and then you get into Hollywood Hills. So you see the Sunset Strip there. Up in that area here, you've got like the Bird Streets. And so that's where you have homes that are a lot more expensive, where you're getting, 1,500 a foot, 2,000 a foot, incredible views and privacy. And then, once you see that little red border there, then you hit Coldwater Canyon, then that's Beverly Hills. So that you have Truesdale Estates, Beverly Hills Post Office, and then Bel Air.
Got it. Okay. And then what happens if I keep going west of Beverly Hills? I get Bel Air.
Well, it depends. Then you have Brentwood, which is still fairly expensive. But if you keep going north, then you have Encino, Studio City, Sherman Oaks, the Valley, which has appreciated by a lot just because of the supply and demand. I mean, we've had a huge demand and supply shortage. So a lot of families are going out into the Valley area, which is still fairly, it's still pretty nice.
Is that
it's
at least
different.
an hour commute, right? At least an hour.
I would say 35, 45 minutes, thanks to Waze, right? Waze will kind of show you the path, but it depends on where you're in the Valley, because we also have areas such as like Calabasas, Hidden Hills, Agora, Westlake, which are beautiful. They're very scenic. But if you work in Beverly Hills or even worse in downtown, you have like a 1.5 hour commute each way. So 3 hours of your day, you're driving.
Has that changed after COVID, where people don't have to go in every day, and so therefore they're willing to stretch?
It has. People in the legal industry, we have a lot of clients as well who are lawyers, and who own their own law firms here in Century City or Beverly Hills. And yeah, they've moved out to Westlake and Agora. They're coming into the office twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. But I am also seeing that trend change a little bit. I think more people are coming into the office, including here at Elliman, where during the pandemic, I was here every day. I need to be in my office. It's where I flourish. And a lot of clients and friends of mine who were working part-time from home and part-time from the office, I think for a while it worked. And then they've said, look, there's just too many distractions at home. I think I'm able to really dive deep into my work and be able to kind of have that separation between home and office, which I love, because when I'm at home, I want to be at home, as hard as that is as an agent. But when I'm here 100%. But I have seen that change a little bit. So a lot of clients who moved out into the Valley are now saying, I don't know if that was the best idea. I think it worked for that moment, but now I'm like, I think I might want to move back.
I think it's happening in fits and starts here in New York as well. JP Morgan and some of the other big high-profile banks said, we want to start seeing you guys in the office 2 days a week, 3 days a week. It's starting. The leadership is coming from some of those big banks, and it's allowing some of the others to follow suit. But it's a slow migration. It's tough. There's a lot of density in New York City, so it's really hard to demand it, especially since the pandemic continues.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get personal now. I'm looking at you in a t-shirt and a jacket, and I'm thinking that's dressed up for LA, right?
Oh yeah.
All right.
I
I
used
can't
to
wear a
wear,
t-shirt like ever, right?
oh,
I have to wear a bow tie, otherwise they think I'm, it's a day off.
oh, no, no. Well, as long as you have a little pocket square, you're fine to balance it out. So I used to wear a full, when I started working here at Elliman 6, 7 years ago, I remember I would wear a full suit, like a full suit tie every single day. And 2 years ago, like during the pandemic, when everything started, things started changing here. I had clients ask me to not wear a suit. They asked me not to wear a tie. They would ask me to please be a little bit more casual. I had clients say, hey, by the way, you're not auditing me today. You're helping me find a house. So next time, wear your sports blazer. That's fine. I mean, I'm wearing, loafers. Like I keep it up. It depends, right? I've had some clients who they want the full show. And I've got the full show. I literally, if I could point my camera in that direction, I have suits, I have ties, I have jackets. I've got the whole setup over here.
I'm
So
glad to hear it, because I thought that when I was the only one, and they said, "What are you, an idiot? Take off the tie. Take off the." They're like, "Stop
no,
it. Stop
well,
looking so East Coast."
I like it. It's part of my brand has always been to, I love clothing and I love how it makes me feel. And it's part of the experience. And certain clients, they don't want it. They've asked me to please be a little bit more casual because it makes them feel more comfortable. And especially people in the entertainment industry, they're the most casual. They'll show up to showings, in sweatpants, dirty t-shirts, flip-flops. I mean, and if you go down to Malibu, like Santa Monica, I mean, they're wearing sandals, they're wearing shorts, they're wearing tank tops. I mean, obviously it's according to that market. I would never do that here. But my clients are the ones who are pretty much paying me. So if they want me in a full getup, I will put on the full getup. If they want me in a t-shirt and a pocket square and a sports jacket, I can do that too.
I ask you this because you've written books on branding. You've given branding, personal branding, a great deal of thought. You make it work for you. Brand with purpose. So yeah, I want to hear more about the branding, because it's not an accident that you don't show up in sandals and a t-shirt. I mean, you can be. You're telling me that you can be overdressed in LA, and I guess it's also true you can be underdressed. So you've got to thread that needle.
No, absolutely. I tell my team it's the experience, and just like a product, right? Like Tiffany's has beautiful packaging. Gucci has beautiful packaging. You walk into Cartier or St. Regis Hotel, everything that you see is part of the packaging. It's part of the experience. If I want something more casual, I'll go search for it. But when I want something in a certain way, like that calls to me, then that's what I'm going to go look for. And so with clothing, obviously, my team and I, we have a manual. And when you join my team, you go through the manual, you initial that you read it through, and we have a layout of what's appropriate apparel. Obviously that's changed a little bit. Before it was suit and tie. That's changed a little bit. It's kind of relaxed a little bit based on, I guess, what the market and what the client wants from us. But it's super important. I mean, when I go to the dentist, if my dentist was showing up in flip-flops and a tank top, I'd be running out of there so quick, right? Because it's part of the packaging that I expect him to see him in a white, suit, scrubs, very professional, even the way that he talks to me. It's all part of the experience. It's all part of, I would say, branding is building trust, right? And so everything has to be very cohesive. How you see me here is, if you walked in through my door, is the exact same experience that you're going to get. If I'm on a listing appointment, same experience. It's a very consistent experience that creates trust over time. And if I kind of zone out of that area, that creates inconsistency. And I don't
want the car. in the old days, I was expected to drive the client around in my car. That seemed to go away for a while, and clients are like, I'll follow you. And they, they have
Yeah.
a car and they say, I'll follow you. And so I get it. And especially with COVID, you're like,
Oh
hey,
yeah,
no
especially.
problem.
I haven't had anyone in my car for at least probably 3 years or so.
So what are you driving? Are you driving a fancy car that's part of your brand, or are you driving a beater because you don't want to show that you're making too much commission?
I mean, I do have a nice Range Rover, a new Range Rover. I love it. I've always, but here's the thing, like
That's
I'm a
very
car
much on
guy. I've
brand.
always had nice cars. Like I love cars. I love the way, I was actually thinking about this morning is, there's certain things that I buy, especially as a CPA, I look at everything much differently. I always look at something as how much value is this going to create for me? Like a gym membership, I go every single day. You divide the cost of the gym membership to the amount of usage that you give it. There's a lot of value for me in comparison to someone who uses it once a month or doesn't go at all. And so for me, the car, I love cars. Every time I get into my car, it makes me feel happy. I'm in my car a lot. It's my second home. And so I want to be comfortable. It's not, it's not one of those things that I buy a car because I care about what other people really think. When I'm with clients, and on dates, right? I park around the corner. Right? You don't want to show up in a car that's way too nice, because then they're gonna say, well, is this guy gonna screw me over? He probably doesn't need the money. Maybe I should just go somewhere else. But it's
Show up in too
LA,
nice a car, you're buying
right?
dinner.
Yeah, but it is LA. It is part, it is part of the packaging. If you showed up in something that I guess wasn't in line with the brand of or the lifestyle that you're trying to sell, people might look at you otherwise. You go to San Francisco, I mean, there's a lot of people up there with a lot of wealth. They don't care. They're driving a Prius, they're driving, an electric car, a Nissan. I had Kerry Washington, who I helped a couple of years ago. She had a Nissan Leaf. Kerry Washington, she didn't care. And she always would say, like, I don't care about that stuff. Great.
I asked because yours is one of the few one of the markets that they put on TV, and everybody's beautiful and drives a fast car.
Well,
And we all
remember,
say-
that's TV. That is TV.
Okay.
It's not, and I have to compete with that all the time.
Well, that's what
I've
I'm
had
wondering.
clients,
You
are you
have
going
to
to
compete.
negotiate on the phone here like they do on? No, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
How about the poster behind you there? What's the story on that?
Oh, this is so this is an art piece that I got from an artist in Japan. So that I got the Dom Perignon, which is one of my
Iconic.
favorite
Yep.
champagnes, and then we got it with the Douglas Elliman color. So he did it for me a couple of years ago when I got this office, and it's like a spray bottle with the champagne dripping down the bottle.
I mean,
Very
you
cool.
can't help. I mean, obviously, you have the iconic brand behind you, and it's
Yeah,
hard to.
see, there we go. It's a better
um,
view. There you go.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next for LA? I mean, I do think that the market, there's a lot of anxiety in the market. The market is sort of going sideways. There's a great deal of let's wait and see, let's see. I have clients saying, we're going to wait and see what the market does before we make a decision, before we decide to do the 5 million versus the 10 million, or before we decide to make the move to, I mean, I think people, if they're moving to this area or moving to Florida, they're doing it anyway. But from my point of view, and you tell me whether the same calculus is going on between California and Texas. But some of my clients are saying I could sell my house in Connecticut for $5 million, and I could go down to Palm Beach, Boca area in Florida, but I'm going to be paying 2% property tax per year. And all the $5 million houses have become 10. So a $10 million house at 2% taxes is $200,000. A lot of the reason to go to Florida went away. I know that they don't have an income tax, but as soon as the property tax went up, and as soon as the prices went up, they began to equalize. I suspect that's going on between LA and Austin right now. That a lot of people said, whatever Joe Rogan said about come on down to Austin, there's plenty of room. It's very conservative. I came for the wide open spaces. Well, they're gone. I came for the value. Well, that's gone. And so am I right? Are you seeing a parallel between LA and Austin that I'm seeing between Palm Beach and New York?
Compared to 12, 16 months ago, I think the shift of clients moving to out of state, at least on the higher end, has in my opinion and in my experience, has stopped. What I have seen is like a lot of my clients, including my parents who are my clients now, they're in their 70s. If the market shifts, this is their home is part of their retirement. Obviously the stock market, and clients of mine whose retirement was also in the stock market, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. So I think it's very situational. I have clients who are saying, well, if we're at the top of the market, this is a huge part of my retirement. I probably should sell it and move somewhere else where it's probably not Florida, because like you said, it's a lot of the incentives have gone away and it's gotten really expensive, including friends of mine who've lived there for a very long time. It's gotten really expensive for them and they're going somewhere else. Right. So I think right now it's in California, in the super, I would say the 5 million plus clientele who are at retirement or close to retirement are thinking, okay, should we sell now? Because we may be at the top of the market, and real estate being as cyclical as it is, I don't know if I can go through another cycle, right? So I might have to sell and downsize. We've had a lot of shift from Los Angeles proper out to, for example, and it's still expensive, but it's still more affordable than, let's say, Beverly Hills, Bel Air, down to like Orange County. A lot of people moving to Orange County, a lot of people moving down to San Diego, whole different lifestyle, a lot less expensive than it is here. I wouldn't say a lot. I would say maybe 15, 20% less, but it's a more casual lifestyle. They can get something there much less than what they're paying here. And it's something that they know, because that was the other uncertainty with clients who were moving to Texas or Florida, where I don't know what it is to live there. I'm going there because I feel like I have to, because of taxes and because of everything that's happening. I need to shelter myself somehow from, overpaying on taxes. So I'm moving to a state where I really don't know if I'm going to like it or not.
How about Nevada and Arizona? Is that like the Carolinas?
There were some people moving to Vegas. We had some big shifts people moving to Vegas. But obviously Vegas, you have some pretty harsh summers there.
What kind of person? A retiree goes to Vegas? A young family?
A retiree. I would say there was some of my clients that were at close to retirement or retirement were moving to Vegas. And because in Vegas, I mean, you can buy a beautiful compound for $2 million. I mean, $2 million gets you a lot in Vegas, even now.
There's a quick question. As you talk about the harsh summers in Las Vegas, water issues are becoming more and more acute out west.
Mm-hmm.
Does LA and Orange County, do you guys draw from the Colorado River water?
I believe so. Yeah. And right now we can only water, as of a month ago, 30 days ago, we can only water 3 days a week. A lot of the fountains, things that you've seen on the streets, especially even in Beverly Hills, have had to shut down. But yeah, water is becoming a huge problem. Huge problem. And they're also adding a lot of surcharges to our utilities. I mean, that's a big problem that we have to face as a state. I mean, we have to face a lot of problems, but that one being one of them is water, because I mean, it's just, we're overpopulated. We have a lot of space, but I was telling Stephen Kotler, who's supposed to be here, but I said, we need to create a new city, right? We have a lot of land. Every time I'm on a plane going from here to Dallas to Houston to Miami, there's a lot of land. We just need to build more cities, right? And that's going to take a really long time. And we need more resources. We need water here in California. We're not getting it. And, I think the next billionaire is going to be the company and person who can, get us more water as soon as possible so that we can take longer showers and water our lawns, because I would love to water my lawn.
You tell your clients that if they're looking for water, we got plenty of water in Connecticut. Come on down. $2 million, I can hook you up.
And not many fires.
Not many fires, no,
Or earthquakes, right?
or
I'm assuming.
earthquake.
Yep.
But there is this thing called snow. And we have
Yeah.
a mixed relationship with that.
So that's easy.
How about as far as like the building climate goes, how difficult is it to get permits for renovations and for new construction?
So renovations, I would say, is not very hard. It's actually fairly easy considering LA, the bureaucracy that we have to deal with here. But new construction, it's tough. New construction is very, very tough. There's a lot of loopholes, especially if you're trying to build a house up in the hills or out near the ocean, the coastal commission. It could take years, 5 to 10 years to build anything. Especially like Mulholland, they just Mulholland, which kind of goes over Bel Air and Beverly Hills. They're imposing a lot of restrictions on what you can build. Before, it was a little bit more lenient, and when I say before, this was 10 years ago. Right now, it's close to impossible to build anything within less than, I would say, 5 years. But it's getting a lot, it's getting difficult. There's companies out here like Thomas James, who builds luxury homes in the Palisades, Santa Monica, West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. They have a system, and I'm sure they've been working the city for a very, very long time. So I'm pretty sure they have a lot of connections with the city, but they have like a very cookie cuttered approach for luxury homes where they have a certain floor plan, but the aesthetic is different. But still same floor plan, and they have a certain strategy of not having the same home on the same block. Like they'll kind of make sure that it's scattered throughout a certain neighborhood. Where for them, I mean, building from scratch could be 6 to 9 months. If you're a new builder and you have a new idea, and you know, one of my friends from Portland who wanted to build something in West Hollywood, and we bought the tear down. And he said, don't worry, I know people. It took 1.5 years instead of it took more than double the amount of time that it was supposed to take to build. And, you know, obviously now with lumber and a lot of raw materials, it's gotten a lot easier. But during the pandemic, for clients of mine who were trying to build just to get windows and doors and wood was, one, super expensive and cutting into their bottom line, but also just hard to get.
How are the inventory levels? So if I can't build, quickly and inexpensively, and inventory was tight, is inventory loosening up?
It is loosening up. I'm starting to see every single day a lot more inventory than I've seen. I'm getting a lot of calls from clients of mine from 12 years ago, 11 years ago, saying, I bought at a great market. I have a lot of equity. I don't want to lose it. I think it's time to go. I actually, and I'll share this with all of you guys, every 6 months, what I do with my clients, we send out a package that we get really nicely binded every 6 months with the assessed value of their property, assuming that they haven't made any changes that I'm not aware of, with a nice handwritten letter. And it's very specific to their property. And I always put in the letter, this is what you bought it for. This is what you could possibly sell it for. This is how much, estimated equity you have in the property. And that throughout time, obviously has gotten me great sellers and also referrals. But when we sent those out a couple of weeks ago, I've been getting a lot of phone calls because people see that large chunk of equity there. And they're saying, if the market takes a dip, I don't want to lose money, right? I don't want to lose money. And so, it's, there's a lot more inventory coming. I think there's fear, right? We'll see July 1st, whenever, that GDP report comes out, if things are not looking swell, and I follow the numbers and things aren't looking great, that might instill a little bit more inventory and a little bit more fear into the sellers of not wanting to lose their hard-earned equity that they've had in their homes for the last, since what? I started in real estate when I left accounting in 2009. So
now, when you send those assessments, are you going from like Zillow, or do you have a special?
No. So we have our multiple listing service out here. So I use that to comp out. We use that in Cloud CMA. So I use those two software systems in order to come up with an assessed value. And then we also have this other one called the Real Report, which goes into more on the macro of what's going on in the neighborhood, including if there's any type of transportation rail lines coming in or stores, schools. I use all that information and I put it together for a client. I'm a numbers nerd, so I enjoy that stuff. And then we just send it out to clients. And again, just to remind them of where they stand, because that's what my financial advisor does with me. He reminds me. I mean, now he reminds me more than ever. But, before that, I kind of want to know where I stand with my investments. And so real estate is primarily, most of my clients are biggest investments. And so I always want to keep them up to date on what's going on. Also, when it comes time to list, it also keeps them realistic, because Zillow, I do not like Zillow. Sometimes they're like, oh, well, it says here that my house is worth, no, I don't think so. Zillow is not correct. Check your report that I sent you 2 months ago.
So I'm in a market here that has 86. Scott asked me earlier, what's the inventory doing? And just like yours, our inventory was way, way low when people were not willing to list during the pandemic, when there was no place to go, and there was a lot of anxiety, and they just said, we're just going to stay put, until we see, where this shakes out. Inventory has gone from probably a low of 45 in this town to now 86 houses. This is in a town of 7,000 households. So relatively, maybe a little bit larger than Beverly Hills. You said 4,000 or 5,000. And I would say a few years ago, when we were in a soft market, the highest point of the highest year, we hit 350 houses on the market. 5% of the houses, of all houses, were on the market. 250 is normal. 86 now is a lot better than 45, but it's still a long way from normal in terms of the amount of inventory and the amount of choice. Of the 86, it looks like 16 of them are over $6 million. So I have a luxury market of 16 houses in New Canaan, but I have a town right next door, Darien, and another one, Greenwich, and so I there's probably 16 towns in this county that you could choose from. But if you specifically wanted New Canaan, and why would you choose New Canaan? Because of schools, commute, taxes, for a variety of reasons. Maybe the same kind of calculus between Beverly Hills and say the Hollywood Hills. Okay, I think I'll I get more for my money. So the same thing is going on here. So you're telling me the same thing, that you're seeing inventory levels are coming up, but have they hit normal?
No.
Far from normal.
Yeah, I would say far from normal from what I remember 6-7 years ago. And the problem is, it's just with clients who do want to sell, they just don't know where to go. They're like, yeah, sure, I could sell, but then what? Like, where do I go? And for those who are not the uber wealthy people of Beverly Hills, like, yeah, I could possibly sell my house, but my income hasn't kind of caught up with where it should be and where I would want to live. So if I sell my property with the income that I'm making now, which is more than what it was when we purchased this home, but I'd be downsizing. I'd be having to downgrade the neighborhood that I live in.
So let's talk about that. So how much? So I have a 25-year-old daughter who has to work in Hollywood. She's an editor. And so she goes from this studio to that studio. So she has to work within an hour, I guess, of downtown LA. And she didn't have $1 million. How many houses, how much of the market, how much opportunity is there either for the downsizer who wants to downsize into a single family house under $1 million, or the 25-year-old, the newlywed, the young professionals? How much opportunity is there in downtown LA now, or within an hour, under $1 million?
That's tough. That's really, really tough.
Is it zero?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's zero, but it's close to zero. I mean, you're really talking about a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 800 square foot home that came up in the outskirts of Los Angeles. It's really, really tough unless you really go out into even areas like, for example, Valencia and Santa Clarita, which are about an hour and a half away. I mean, a starter home was 800,000, and that was 2-3 years ago. Now
And
those
that's
same
gone.
homes are 1.3, 1.4. So if you're looking for something under $1 million for a single family home, I mean, you're not going to find it in Orange County. You're not going to find it in Los Angeles County. I mean, you're going to have to go pretty deep out into San Gabriel County, which from downtown, I mean, that could be a 1 hour, 45-minute commute.
Has that also affected the rents?
Oh yeah. Rents are really high.
So what
Rents are
is it going
really
to cost
high.
me to rent that 2-bedroom, 800 square foot starter home?
A 2-bedroom, if we're talking like single family home for a 2-bedroom, I mean, we're probably talking 4,000 or 5,000 a month. Condo, maybe 3,000 a month. But those are starting. I mean, if you want something pretty nice, like new construction for a condo, for an apartment, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, you're looking at 5,000-6,000 a month. For a single family home, pretty nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath, you're probably looking about like 7,000-8,000 a month.
Now, I looked at your listings and it seemed like there was 4 or 5 choices at that $2 million level. Am I
Mhm.
remembering right? So
Yeah.
it opens wide open when I get to the $2 million level. I got choices.
A little bit more. It depends on the neighborhood that you're looking at. Like for example, some of the ones that we have are in Silver Lake. And that's about 30 minutes from Beverly Hills, 25, 30 minutes. Yeah, I mean, $2 million gets you a lot more. Like a $2 million house in Silver Lake and Beverly Hills, regardless of the zip code, you're probably going to pay about 4, so double. So it really just depends. But I wouldn't say it opened things. I think open up Los Angeles as a whole in the 3s. I'd say at 3 million plus, you get a lot more options. But then even at that, I have clients who then are in the 3s who, well, there's nothing here. And then and then they want something that's in the 4s. And then I have clients who are in the 4s, there's nothing here. They want what's in the 5s, right? And then so on and so forth.
I actually had a talk with a young project manager of mine today, and she's looking to buy a house in foreclosure because it's the only thing that's out there that's roughly affordable. And I asked her, it's like, what does your first house cost? And the answer, of course, is all the money in the world. Just doesn't matter who you are. That's what the first one costs. And after that, I think everybody comes in and says, I don't want to go above 1. And by the time they're done looking, they're at 1.5 to 2, and at 2, you're at 3, and all of that. It's
Right.
human nature.
Exactly.
I'm just I got to push back and I got to say, okay, I get it. Starter house is $2 million, but do the jobs, do the wages support that kind of rent and purchase? And the short answer is no. And when I look around this area, I'm in New Canaan, is one of the most expensive. It's probably second or third most expensive town in this county. And you don't have to spend $3 million. You can. There is vicious competition at the $2 million level, but so meaning there's going to be, if there's a nice $2 million 4-bedroom colonial on an acre and it comes up this weekend for $2 million, there's going to be 4 or 5 people competing for it, and maybe it'll go 10% over. We just saw that last weekend, and there was another one in town the weekend before. And so it happens pretty regularly that we see competition at the $2 million level. But that gets you, that's a lot of house. That's 4,000 or 5,000 square feet on an acre in a 2-car garage, and it's 60-minute train ride or car ride into Midtown Manhattan. So when you tell me that a starter house in LA, an hour is $2 million, I think, okay.
Well, a starter house in LA, like in LA County, like let's say from downtown to Santa Monica, starter house, you can find something for, and this is LA, not Beverly Hills, because Beverly Hills is a whole different story.
Right.
But I mean, for one single family home for like 1.5, 1.6 is what I'm seeing. But that's again, starter home.
All right. So that's what I am. I'm a newlywed. I buy the $1.5 million starter home in what do you call it? Silver Springs?
We have Silver Lake, Eagle Rock. Yeah.
What are the taxes there on that $1.5 million house?
2.25.
2.25. What does that mean?
2.25. So it's 2.25 yearly from the amount of the purchase price. So if you bought a house for
2.25%.
correct.
of the purchase price.
Of the purchase price yearly of that purchase price. And here in California, that's what you're going to be paying for. I mean, my parents are paying nothing for their property taxes. It doesn't get assessed yearly like it does in other states. Like you keep paying that amount. If you're there for 30, 40 years, that's what you're going to end up paying. Whatever you paid for the house, multiply by the 2.25%.
Okay, we're paying 1.7% in New Canaan, which is on the low end of that, but we don't have that protection. It will go up every 5 years. We have a reassessment, and that's throughout the state.
And that,
So,
that's Proposition 31, was it, or Prop 19, or what proposition was that? That froze the property taxes at something like that plus inflation? Oh, well, doesn't
Is
matter.
that for me?
Yes.
That must have been before my time.
Well, I mean, I've heard from people in California that actually gums up the works in that, like your parents, they
Mhm.
almost can't move, because if they move, no matter what they downsize, they're going to be paying so much more in property tax.
Well, that did change a little bit. There was a proposition last year where you can move and move up in price, but you just have to pay. You'll keep paying that same tax up to the amount of the assessed value of the home that you sold. And any addition to that, then you would pay another amount based on the tax for that assessed value of that property.
What if you what if you go down? So you sell a 2 million and buy a 1 million.
Then you would pay the new assessed value, the lower one. Yeah.
Although
You
your
pay
2
the
million,
lowest of the two.
but your 2 million might have been assessed at like 200,000 because you've been there for 10 years.
Correct. So you pay the lowest of the two, whatever makes like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, so now I get it. Okay, so I buy that 1.5 million. I'm paying 20 grand in taxes. And do I have a good school system, or do I have to send my kids to private school?
No, you gotta send your kids to private school.
Oh my God! So where are you spending all the money?
Yeah.
Where's
Well,
all the money going?
if you want to send like Hancock Park has a good school, Santa Monica has a good school system. Obviously, Beverly Hills does, but you're gonna have to be spending at least 2.5 to 3 in order to get your kids to go to those schools.
You guys
Got
don't have snow plowing. What do you spend the money on?
What do they spend their money on? I
By
think
the
the
way,
red
we
bottom,
spent
the red
70
bottom, the shoes and the clothing and all the stuff that you need to make it look like you're very successful, I guess.
No, but what does the town spend the money on? This town
Oh, I
spends
don't know.
70
That's a great question.
70% of
my
everything on the
governor,
school.
my mayor that, our mayor, yeah. I don't know. Like being what are we still? I'm thinking maybe I'm still living in the past of thinking that California is the 5th largest economy in the world, but I don't know where we spend our money because our roads need some work. We have a big, I love California. Don't get me wrong. I was born and raised here. I love it here. My whole family's here, cousins, friends, family. They're all here. But I do feel like there's a big problem. I mean, when you step out into Beverly Hills or Brentwood, where you have 4 or 5 $20 million homes and there's a row of homeless people everywhere. I mean, that's a problem. So I don't know where we're spending our money. That's a great question. And so I know Caruso, who I am, not to get political, but he's running for office here and he's a big developer out here in Los Angeles, like the Grove, the Americana, and there's a place here in the Palisades as well. Maybe we'll find some solutions. I mean, I feel like they're a lot farther than just something that could get repaired within a 12-month period or a term at that. But that's a great question. I'd love to see where all the taxpayers' money is going. Who knows?
All right, so we're going to come back to you, I don't know, in 6 months, and we're going to ask you, how's the market? And we're going to say, what happened to all that money? We're going to follow up on this question.
I'm going to look like 10 years older and be like, Ivan, is that still you? Oh, it's horrible.
Well, this has been great. Thank you. Do you have any questions of us?
No, this has been a blast. I hope you didn't meet Stephen. I miss Stephen Calder. I mean, he texted me this morning. He's like, hey, I'm really embarrassed, but you have got to cover for me. Can you do it? I'm like, of course.
Can I talk for an
like
hour?
I said, I can do this for hours.
Hour.
Yeah, I'm more fun anyway.
You are.
I'm more honest. Don't tell him that.
No, this was great. I'm glad, and you certainly carried the hour, and we got a very good understanding of the LA market. And I think LA deserves an hour or more. So
yeah,
thank you.
Well, thank you guys. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me at Ivan Estrada at Elliman, or on social media, Ivan Estrada Properties. We're posting, I post a lot. I post some really good, sexy houses and stats. And like I said, I'm a numbers nerd, so I'm all about the numbers. And I, keep it really interesting on there. And I do a lot of videos too, which Stephen Coller's always trying to push all the agents to do videos. I'm like, yeah, just
I'm
copy
gonna
all my
send you one of
stuff.
my videos, but also if you find one of those starter houses for my daughter, you let me know.
I will, absolutely. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah, she's got a little tiny apartment right now, but I think she's starting to think, maybe I got to make some investment in real estate. So
I'd love to help.
I'll send her over.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Ivan.
All right, bye guys. Have a great
Thank
day.
you, Scott.
Nice job, John.
Bye.
Till next week. Bye.
Bye-bye all.